Welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Bowen. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Troy Savings Bank Music Hall, and we're so excited to have you all joining us again this evening for the second of 3 virtual education events this spring. Tonight we'll be featuring once again the musicians of our fantastic ensemble in Residence Quintocracy. They've appeared many times, once in our first education session that happened a couple weeks ago, and throughout our virtual season thus far. And they're back again with us tonight for the second installment of this education series. They're all fantastic musicians and great people to get to know, and we're incredibly excited to have them joining us again this evening. I'd like to take a moment just before we get started to thank the organizations that make this type of programming possible. National Grid and NISCA, thanks so much. Tonight we'll be hearing from Quintocracy as they tell us more about their musical journeys as musicians. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Melanie.
All right. Hello, everyone. So you may notice that there is 4 of us here tonight instead of 5, and that's just because our clarinetist, Mike D's wife, just had a baby like a week and a half ago. So he's settling into that, and so but he sent us some nice videos, so we will still get to hear from him, and it's gonna be lovely. So I'm actually going to start off today. My name is Melanie. I play the flute, and I guess my musical journey started when I was just 7 years old. I started playing the piano. My general music teacher noticed that I was really into music class and recommended that I get lessons if possible to my mother. So that's what we did. And then when 4th grade rolled around, we were able to pick an instrument. I picked the flute. It was between flute and clarinet for me. I liked both of them a lot, but my best friend at the time was playing the flute, and so I went with that one, and then here I am today. Yeah, and then just like Mike D was saying in his video, which you'll see in a bit, I did a bunch of all counties and Long Island Flute Club and just supplemental things. And then my flute teacher suggested that I could possibly do music as a career, and I was like, yeah, I'm into that. And so she helped me get ready for auditions, and I went to SUNY Fredonia for my undergrad, double majored with performance and music education, and taught for a year in the classroom and was like, I much prefer private teaching, and went back and got my master's in flute performance at the Hart School of Music. Moved down to the city for a few years to try freelancing there, and got to play some of the fancy venues like Symphony Space and Domena Center and Alice Tully Hall, and got to play with the wonderful Chelsea Symphony and stuff like that. And kind of realized that even though I grew up outside the city and had the opportunity to go in a lot and liked doing that living there was different than the visiting thing. And so I moved up here, and I was already friends with Kelly Lockwood, and we were in the same woodwind quintet in grad school, and that was a great time. And so formed this woodwind quintet when I got up here. Mm-hmm. And Kelly was awesome and got me a job at the wonderful Gildoy Music Academy where I teach. And so I do that, and I teach college intro to music classes there, and that is the things that I do as a musician: freelancing, playing lots of chamber music, playing with symphonies. This lovely group. And yeah, so anyway, I'm just gonna segue into my piece that I have for you today. It's called Have and Hold by Allison Loggins-Hull of Flutronics. And Jess asked us to pick a diverse program, and I was like, I'll do a woman composer because I think that that's great, and underrepresented category there. So her piece is part of the Boccaccini project, and it was actually about escaping the deadly effects of the Black Plague back then. And today, the equivalent is the coronavirus pandemic. And so she wrote Have and Hold to just kind of write those feelings of missing people and not being able to see them that she loves in her life. And so that's what this piece is about. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of picked this piece because there's singing involved, and I was a little bit afraid of singing in public, and I was like, let me get over this. I'm gonna schedule a piece where I have to be okay with singing in public. So yeah, that was just my personal reason for it, besides it being gorgeous. So I hope you enjoy. Mm-hmm. We're gonna share the screen with you.
Share either one.
Like that? Okay.
And it's the bottom one.
Got it. Here we go.
Make it big. It automatically does for that.
All right. Next, I'm going to pass over the proverbial mic to Miss Kelly.
Hi, everybody. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Obviously, we're 4 out of the 5 members of Quintocracy. Absolutely fabulous to be here and be seeing you all. And just a quick little reminder for you guys, there is a Q&A section on here too. So if you have any questions or anything that you think while these performances are happening, feel free to just pop them into the Q&A and we will see them and we will either answer them or answer them during or potentially answer them afterwards. But if you have questions about us specifically or any of the music that we're playing, we're so happy to share with you guys. We're just so happy to be in a situation that we can perform, especially through everything that's happening with COVID. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself first, and then I'm going to talk about the piece that I'm going to be playing next, which I chose. So I'm the oboist in our woodwind quintet. I started playing oboe actually late, but actually not that late compared to a lot of other people that we know. So oftentimes people will start on other instruments and they'll be migrated over to playing oboe because there's a certain set of coordination skills that go along with almost every single woodwind instrument that you play. But oboe, just because of the delicacy of the reed and how tricky the instrument can be, oftentimes it's better to leave it until a little bit later. But I think my story is a little bit unique because I actually started out playing flute like Melanie did. Lots of weird parallels here in terms of the instruments and the schooling. But I started out playing flute in 4th grade and I played it until I was in high school. And I was participating in a musical event with my father. So he's a wonderful pianist. He conducts a lot of things. He's an organist at his local church. And we did a ton of musicals together at our local theater. It was so much fun. But I was playing flute in a Christmas cantata that was actually written by a local composer in Western New York. And so we performed it out there. And I'd done the rehearsals and there hadn't been anybody else who'd really showed up, like aside from like the core group of musicians, but somehow for the performance, he had landed an oboist to come and play. And I had never seen or heard an oboe before. You guys are going to hear it in a second in case you haven't either. It's a pretty unique instrument, but once you know the sound of it, you realize that it's kind of everywhere. It's all over the place. People love oboe. So basically what happened was this poor woman sat down next to me and she played her first couple of notes and I just kind of looked at her like this and stared at her and I was like, what is that? What are you playing there? In my awkward freshman year of high school self. And she explained to me what the oboe was, and I immediately asked her if I could try the instrument, which is gross because it's a reed, but it's fine. She did actually pull out a fresh reed for me to try it on, and I could not make a noise on it. I couldn't make a sound at all that first time. I was so upset. But I went to my band teacher after that, and for about a week straight, I nagged him. I begged him. I just went nuts. I was like, please, please let me play this instrument. I'd never heard anything like it before. And so ultimately he did one day hand me the oboe, hand me a book, said, go buy a reed and get yourself a private teacher. I will work with you on this, but you're going to need more help than what I can give you because he's a brass teacher. So I ended up taking oboe all the way through high school. I did indeed do all of those things, and I started studying privately with a member of the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, or I think he was a former member at the time. But and then I ended up going to college for music education, like many of us do, and I got done with my music education degree and was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to teach in a school. I want to teach private lessons like that one. So then I went to graduate school. So I went to undergrad at SUNY Fredonia, which is in Western New York, and then I went to the Hart School at the University of Hartford, where I bumped into Melanie for the second time. And then after that, I did a degree at SUNY Purchase called an artist diploma, which is like a postgraduate stall before I had to pay my student loans back. So I through that degree, I was able to live and work down in the city for a while, and I had a lot of different jobs. I performed, I taught some lessons, I worked for a bank, I was a server, and then I landed on working for a music school in the city called the Brooklyn Music School, Brooklyn Music School, BMS. And then my husband and I had to move up to upstate for his job. So once I got here, I actually found a wonderful job working for another music academy that I've grown from 0 to over 500 students a week, and opened a second location and even a third location. But I also still perform. I teach about 14 or 15 students a week, I think I see. And when COVID's not happening, I perform with these guys, and I've performed even with Glenn's Fall Symphony, a couple other groups up here, which have been super fun. So my musical journey is probably like many that you'll come to encounter, where some of us have the straight path, we go to teaching, we go to performing. Some of us just end up kind of cobbling together what works best for us and use our strengths to live off of, which is so much fun with music. You can be so ubiquitous with it. So I'm going to introduce my piece, and hopefully you guys have encountered double reeds before. So oboe and bassoon, actually, and will introduce the bassoon to you as well. But oboe and bassoon are both very unique instruments in that our reeds are made of two pieces of cane that essentially vibrate together, which is very similar to how the human voice works with your vocal cords. So our instrument has so many cool sounds, so many different things that we can do. But I decided that for the piece that I wanted to choose, I'm choosing the Benjamin Britten 6 Metamorphoses after Ovid. And just a quick catch up, Ovid was a Roman poet. Yeah, Roman. Not Greek, Roman. Yes, he was a Roman poet. So he wrote all this beautiful literature. He's considered one of the 3 greatest of his time in his era. And he wrote this series called Metamorphoses. And so what Britten did was he took several of the stories from that poem, from that work, and he turned them into 6 metamorphoses. So he picked 6 specific people. And I'm going to play the one called Pan, which is talking about Pan, who played upon the panpipe that was Syrinx, his beloved. So he basically, in his transformation, the woman that he loved turned into a reed flute. Yeah. So, and what I find unique about this piece is just that it's so, it reminds me of an oboist trying out their reed for the first time. So we make our own reeds. There's a whole process that goes with it, but basically you have your own reed song. It's very unique and identifying for each person about what you're looking for in your reed. So that's one of the reasons I picked this piece. I love Benjamin Britten, and I think this kind of showcases a lot of the stuff that the oboe can do. So without further ado, I will get you started. We want to share sound. And I'm going to share this one with you. great.
fun.
That's great. Oh, so next up, Mike is going to introduce himself. So we'll click on his video.
Yeah. Let's share the same
Share
screen.
the same screen.
Where is it?
3A.
That
There we go.
one.
Mhm.
Where is the mouse?
We're coming.
We're coming, guys.
There it is. That one.
Hello, my name is Mike D, and I am the clarinetist in Quintocracy, here to tell you about my musical journey. My journey started when I was in 7th grade in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I was born and raised, and I was asked to pick an instrument to play in the band. I went back and forth between a few, and ended up picking the clarinet because it was the one instrument that would fit with me on the bus. I'm about 7 feet tall now. I know you can't really see over video, but it would make it really hard to pick something like the tuba or the trombone or the saxophone, so I went with the instrument that would fit in my backpack. I went through middle and high school playing clarinet, getting into all the honors ensembles, and eventually went to do my bachelor's degree at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. I did my degree in music performance and started my freelance career playing with groups like the Pittsburgh Opera and the Pittsburgh Ballet. I eventually auditioned for and was accepted into the Manhattan School of Music in New York City, where I did my master's in orchestral performance, and eventually worked there after I graduated in 2013 in administration for about 5 years. Going back and forth between freelance career and working in administration, because it's fairly difficult to do a pure, unless you have a lot of really great connections, a pure freelance career as a musician. So I was doing both to make ends meet at the time. Eventually that brings me to where I am today, up in Round Lake, New York and upstate New York, and how I met the members of Quintocracy. In my freelance career, I had some connections with our oboist, Kelly Lockwood. Britten, Allison, they're a horn player and a bassoonist who I did a lot of freelancing with. We were talking one day and they mentioned, oh, you're moving up to the Albany area. Our friend Kelly lives up there. Maybe she can help get you some sort of work. So I reached out to Kelly. She ended up getting me a teaching job at the Guilderland Music Academy and the Katy School of Music, where one day when I was preparing between lessons for an audition for the Albany Symphony, the flutist Melanie Sherrion walked over and said, hey, you're pretty good. Do you have any interest in being in a quintet?
I said, you're fantastic.
Then we started to talk, and I was eventually invited to come and have a rehearsal and play with the group, meet everyone, see how things went. And I thought, this is great. This is what I've been looking for. I want to do really performing. I love chamber music. So came to the rehearsal. We played Carnival of the Animals by Camille Saint-Saens. And little did I know that it was going to actually be a recording session for a grant submission. And it went really well. As you all know, I'm here in the group, and it was really great. So that's where sort of all of that led for me today. And I've been playing clarinet for about 20 years. This brings me to my piece on the program, my solo piece, the Sonata for Clarinet and Piano by Camille Saint-Saens. It sort of hits double duty, as it's the same composer that brought me to Quintocracy, and this piece is the first piece that I had ever played with piano accompaniment. So I want to present this to you, the first movement of Camille Saint-Saens' Sonata for Clarinet and Piano, and it's beautiful, and I hope you enjoy.
Yay, Mike D! He's so fabulous. All right, here is Mike D's rendition of the Sonata. absolutely fabulous.
We love his sound.
Oh, Mike D.
All right, next we're going to introduce Will Safford, our bassoonist. Take it away.
Thank you. So I'm the bassoonist, and as Kelly mentioned, double reed player. We talked a little bit about that last week, so I'll move ahead a bit. My background is that my family really enjoyed music. My mother was a talented amateur pianist and had a beautiful contralto voice. And her uncle, my great uncle, was a music professor at Sarah Lawrence and a vocal coach. So I was surrounded by music from a very young time. And I also used to go to the Metropolitan Opera and the New York City Ballet to hear my uncle's students perform, as well as just to hear beautiful music, as well as going to the New York Philharmonic and things like that when I was a child. So in third grade, all of us started on the recorder. And this, I mentioned this part of the story 2 weeks ago. So for those of you who may have been here, you already heard it, and I hope you enjoy it again. So I started on a recorder in third grade with my entire grade. And at the end of third grade, you got to choose what instrument you wanted to play. And for reasons I don't even remember now, I chose the flute. They would not let me play the flute. Why? For a very silly reason. Because I'm a boy. Back then, they had misguided ideas of what were boys' instruments and what were girls' instruments. Well, today we fixed that. Today, men as well as women and boys and girls can play flute or bassoon or tuba or whatever instrument you want. So that didn't happen with me. So that when I was in fourth grade, they put me on saxophone. I like saxophone. I like it to this day. I enjoyed playing it. But there's a significant problem with somebody who likes orchestra playing, which is that saxophones are rare in orchestra. So this was something on my mind, especially as I got into seventh grade, because I liked orchestra and saxophones just aren't a part of it for the most part. At which point my junior high school band conductor asked me one day, "How would you like to play the bassoon?" I said, "Sure. What's that?" Well, it turned out he was a bassoonist himself, and I was his first student in many years. So I studied with him while I was in high school. And I played throughout high school, not only in the high school orchestra and the band, and I continued to play saxophone because it was fun, but my primary focus became the bassoon. I also played in the Westchester Youth Symphony, which is similar to the Empire State Youth Orchestra here in this area. I also played with a professional orchestra, the Westchester Symphony, which no longer exists, but used to be similar to the Schenectady Symphony, as well as playing in NISMA all-state ensembles. So when it came time for college, I had a tough time deciding, do I want to do music, engineering, or liberal arts? So this is where I took a slightly different path from the other members of the quintet. I actually chose liberal arts. If I were to do it all over again, I would choose to go somewhere that had really strong music program and a really strong liberal arts program, such as Bard or Northwestern or Oberlin or quite a few other places. But instead, I did liberal arts. I went to Middlebury College. I played lots of music there, orchestra, chamber music, Broadway style plays, and then graduated from there, played for a few more years. I took a few years off from playing, and then I came back to playing, and I went back to work on it harder, first to Schenectady Community College to brush up on stuff that had gone a little stale over the years, and then I went and got my master's at University of Massachusetts Amherst. And since then, I've been playing professionally and just having a great time on both bassoon and contrabassoon. And for the next concert 2 weeks from now, I'll talk more about the contrabassoon. But for now, I'll tell you about the piece that I played for this concert. It's called Bassoon Set for Solo Bassoon by Adolphus Hailstork. He was born in 1941. I quote from his biography. Adolphus Hailstork received his doctorate in composition from Michigan State University, where he was a student of H. Owen Reed. He had previously studied at the Manhattan School of Music under Vittorio Giannini and David Diamond, at the American Institute at Fontainebleau with Nadia Boulanger, and at Howard University with Mark Fax. Dr. Hailstork resides in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and is Professor of Music Emeritus and Eminent Scholar at Old Dominion University in Norfolk. A fun piece of trivia: his fanfare on Amazing Grace was part of the inaugural prelude for the inauguration this year of President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Dr. Hailstork wrote Bassoon Set for the students of the National Association of Negro Musicians. Besides for the fact that I like the piece and I like Hailstork's music, I chose Bassoon Set for this concert for 3 reasons. I like programming music by living composers. Dr. Hailstork grew up here in Albany, and he is an African-American composer. We in Quintocracy want to have diversity in the composers we choose for a diverse audience. I shall perform the first movement of the Bassoon Set.
Thank you so much, Will. Let's take you over to that performance.
Very cool.
Yay!
I like that.
Thank you, Will.
Oh, and next Katie gets to take it away.
I guess it's finally my turn. So as many of you may already know, my name is Catherine or Katie Svatek, and I'm the horn player in Quintocracy. And the horn is a brass instrument, but if you caught our last performance a couple of weeks ago, you would have learned that we get to play in the woodwind quintet because the sound, the timbre of the horn, blends really well with the other instruments. So it's really cool. I get to play in a woodwind quintet, and these guys are so wonderful to have me. My journey into music is similar to many people's, though in some ways you could say that mine actually started before I was born. My parents actually met in college band. Neither one of them is a professional musician, but they both went to Oswego for different aspects of education. And my dad played trombone and my mom played bassoon, and they got married, and I have a couple siblings and me. So I'm here because of music, which I think is pretty cool. My own personal journey started when I was 4 or 5. My whole family is very musical. My dad, as I mentioned, played trombone, and he was in a local area big band. So I do remember going to some of his concerts when I was really little, which was a lot of fun. And I started playing around on our piano when I was young. My brother would teach me some stuff. Of course, he taught me Heart and Soul, which I'm sure everybody loved to hear me play forever and ever. But I did start taking lessons on piano when I was 4 or 5. And then when I kept playing piano. I was singing. I did some talent shows at school. It was a lot of fun. And then I started on horn in 5th grade because nobody else in my family had played it, and I wanted to be different. They had taken the trumpet and the trombone and the bassoon and the clarinet and the oboe and the flute, and like they really had taken everything, and my school didn't have strings. So I picked the horn, and it has stuck. I did try to switch to oboe in middle school. My teacher wouldn't let me. I tried to switch to contrabass clarinet, which is kind of obscure. My teacher wouldn't let me, probably a good thing. I grew up in the area. I played in Empire State Youth Orchestra all through high school, and that organization. So I was honored enough to play at Troy, at the Troy Savings Bank Music Hall as a kid, teenager, and at Saint-Saens Hall and at Tanglewood a couple of times, and down at Carnegie Hall through Youth Orchestra. I then went on to Creighton School of Music for music education, and I did get my performance certificate, which said I did all the work of a performance degree without ever declaring it a degree. So by the time I had thought about doing it, I was almost done, and my teacher said, we can give you a slip of paper that says you did all the work without having to have the extra degree. So I said, okay. I thought about double majoring in voice, actually. And then I realized that I also played volleyball, and I wrecked my voice like every fall from yelling on the volleyball court. So that didn't really work out. And I decided I wanted to have some time to do some things. So
Why?
I know, right? I got into conducting classes, realizing I didn't like conducting. So my dreams of being a band director kind of went out the window. But I loved the early childhood classes. And so I took some extra music and early childhood courses, did some extra certifications. And that was my plan, was to go and become an early elementary music teacher. And then must have been junior year, I decided I kind of want to go into performance. And so I started taking some auditions and went to grad school for music performance, thinking that I wanted to be a college professor, like a studio, the horn teacher somewhere. So I went out to Michigan State, and I studied French horn performance. And I got to stay for an extra year, which was wonderful. They didn't have enough horn players, so they gave me extra money to stay longer so that they had enough players in their studio at the time. So I just got to play a lot my last year. It was great fun. Freelanced around Michigan. And then I finished my degree, and I moved back to upstate New York. There weren't any jobs anywhere. So I moved back home for a while and wasn't really playing. I was honestly a little burnt out. So I kind of put my horn away. And then actually a mutual friend of Kelly's and Melanie's and mine got me back into playing. We had a little horn quartet for a while. And right around the time that I also started a music studio in Greenwich, New York, with another friend of mine. And so it all kind of happened at once. And I started playing music again. I started teaching music again. I was teaching upwards of 30 students a week on every instrument from ukulele to euphonium to flute. I really taught everything up there for a while, it was so much fun. I would still be doing it if I hadn't met my husband and moved down to the Loudonville Colony area. And that commute got to be a bit much. And so continuing the musical journey, my husband is also he's an organist and a musician, even though by day he's a software engineer. So we have a great time at home. We'll sight read piano duets. He plays piano with me. We'll just like, hey, I got some new music. Let's just sight read through it. And it's kind of a hot mess sometimes. But it's great fun. Which is honestly, that was what his teacher had inspired in him was, I want you to be able to go to conservatory on piano, but really what I want is for you to have a lifelong joy of music and to be able to sit down and play. And I think that's such a wonderful thing. And I do try to instill that in my students as well, hopefully somewhat successfully. So the piece that I'm going to play for you is Laudatio for horn. It is by Bernard Kroll. And as Mike said, his piece was the first one he had played with accompaniment. For me, this is the first piece I had ever performed that's just horn. I had, not that I played with a piano all the time, but this there's no piano part, there's no orchestra part. It is just horn. So you feel very exposed when you do something like that, especially as a brass player where I have to empty some water out of my horn sometimes. You'll actually see it in the video. So you don't get some gurgles. And it's a little awkward, and you have to get really comfortable with some silence, because we're not always silence is a big part of music as well. It's not just the sounds. So this piece is really contemplative, and it's almost like a prayer at the beginning. It's very evocative of Gregorian chant. And there's actually the first line of the Te Deum Laudamus actually comes into play about halfway through the piece. And the chant goes, Te Deum Laudamus. And the horn plays that. I'm actually stopping it's a type of muting where I stick my hand all the way into the bell and mute the sound a little bit. So it gets really quiet. So you might have to listen really hard for it. But that melody does come right into play. There's also some kind of manic, crazy roller coaster parts of it as well, which is a lot of fun. I'm almost done, I promise. But this piece, the story of how I started playing this piece is kind of hilarious. We were having a masterclass. It was my sophomore year of college, and there was a masterclass. So a professional horn player was coming to our college and some of us were going to play for him, and he was going to basically tell us how we did and what he thought we could do better, or what we do really well, things like that. And so it was basically kind of a mini private lesson, but in front of your whole studio, all the other people that you were taking lessons with and stuff. And so we had the fourth horn from the New York Philharmonic coming up. And my teacher decided that she wanted me to play. And so she hands me this piece about 2 days before. And I said, sure, I can do that. No problem. That's kind of how I roll.
She's a great sight reader.
I really enjoy sight reading and getting things thrown at me last minute. It works for me. But so I played it, I learned it, played it for the master class, and he said, that sounded really great. I actually don't know this piece that well, but it sounds like you have a wonderful handle on it. And so the whole studio kind of giggled, because everybody knew that I had just gotten it and had only had probably about 4 or 5 hours of practice time on it. Total, because it was also volleyball season. And I did get to play volleyball all through college. So those of you who play sports, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do both. You can. It takes work, but you can do it. So it was just kind of a fun way to get into it. And I was nervous. I'd never done it before. But he thought it went well. And then as I've played it over the years, I've pulled it out, and it's definitely evolved. I've gotten more comfortable with the silences. And certainly the way I play it now is not the way I played it almost 20 years ago. 18, I don't even know how long. 18 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. But either way, I hope you enjoy this piece, Laudatio for horn.
Thanks, preacher.
I shall do it. Which one did I share?
You just hit share, I'm not sure.
I shared the wrong screen. Hold on.
Boop, we're coming.
I'm with it, guys. I'm really with it.
There we go. That's the one.
This one.
Yeah. Up.
5.
This one.
Up. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh dear.
All right.
All right, folks.
Lovely.
Hold on one second. Boop.
Okay.
All right.
So now we're going to transition to some quintet music where you will hear all 5 of the instruments playing together.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one we're going to do is Take 5, and actually Mike D has a nice little intro for us, so we're going to listen to what he has to say.
Yay!
Hi, I'd like to talk about the next piece on our program, Take 5. This is an interesting piece in the journey of quintocracy, as it represents another genre of music that we can perform. This gives us the opportunity to play a little bit of jazz music, and this happens to be one of the most famous jazz pieces out there. So to sort of distill what this is about, I'd like to read some program notes I found that really encapsulate it. Take 5 is a tune that is forever branded with our association of Dave Brubeck. However, Brubeck did not write the tune. It was written by his legendary saxophonist Paul Desmond. The song came from the album Time Out, which spent 164 weeks on the Billboard 200 in 1959 and was the first jazz LP to sell 1 million copies. Ironically, Columbia Records only allowed the album to be released under the assumption that the quartet would go back to recording jazz standards for subsequent projects. The album consists of 7 songs unified by irregular time signatures, and it was inspired by music the quartet heard while on a State Department-sponsored tour of the Middle East and India. Most mainstream jazz was in 4/4 or 3/4, which is 4 beats per measure or 3 beats per measure. It's something that we normally hear in music in that area. But this album explored irregular meters like 9/8, 6/4, and the meter of Take 5, 5/4. While Paul Desmond came up with the melody, it was the drummer Joe Morello who came up with the groove. Morello was bored playing in 4/4, so he started working with uneven time signatures for a change of pace. He wanted a groove that was slow enough that one could follow the odd meter, but fast enough for listeners to shake their heads. Take 5 was originally intended to be a drum solo, but after collaborating with Desmond, it became a jazz standard that inspired other 5/4 themes, such as Lalo Schifrin's classic Mission Impossible. Take 5 became such a part of the American vernacular that it was even used as the theme of NBC's Today Show in the 1960s. I thought that was really cool. As directed by Desmond's estate after his death in 1977, all of the royalties from the song are going to the American Red Cross, which is also really great. So here is Take 5 by Paul Desmond.
All right. No, it's you next.
Oh, no, Africa.
Oh, is Africa next?
Yay!
Africa's
next.
It's
That
my
is you.
turn. Yay! All right, folks, I'm going to talk to you really quickly about Africa. It's a tune that probably almost everybody has heard before, or many of you have heard before. So Africa was originally written in the early 80s. It's a bit of an older song, a little bit of pop. And what was cool about it was the reason it even came to be was because one of the members of the group was messing around with a new keyboard, and he was like, I want to see what this thing can do. So that opening that you hear to Africa, the ba 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 da ba ba ba, that was just him messing around, and then he wrote a whole song about it. It took him about 10 minutes to do so, and then he labored over it for 6 months, making sure the lyrics and stuff were right before he brought it to the rest of the band. So the cool thing about Africa is it's something that's sort of come in and out of the popular zeitgeist, or our conscious as time has gone on. So it had a really weird resurgence in like the 2010s or so, and I think even Weezer did a cover of it, which was pretty great after I guess fans were begging him to do it. So we would love to show you our rendition of Africa, which I bet you didn't know that woodwind quintets could play music like this, but as you just saw, we did jazz. Now we're going to do a little bit of synth rock for you. So hold tight. I'm going to pass you over to our screen to watch us play Africa.
That was fun.
Fabulous.
So you're probably wondering why we're playing all these weird, diverse pieces, but it's because we don't only play in the concert hall. We perform in lots of spaces like museums, colleges, airports, farmers markets, house concerts. We do elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, all sorts of things. So
The Troy Savings Bank Music Hall.
yeah, we're everywhere. So we do lots of
Anywhere.
things.
And we will go anywhere, like have food, we'll play, right? So, yeah.
So next up is the Muppets, and this was what was played at the beginning of every episode for all the seasons, and it changed slightly, but we're just going to actually show you the original, just a little chunk of it, and then we'll show you our recording of it. Here we go. Play.
It's the Muppet Show with tonight's guest star, Mr. Joel Grey.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
All right, and now we're going to play ours.
All right, so pause it for a second. We got to share a different screen.
Oh, okay. That's weird for my class. I don't have to do that. Okay.
Yes.
It's not moving over.
All right, well, is our rendition. What you didn't hear at the end of that was us giggling over here because we love the way that piece ends so much with Will's little solo there.
Every time we still
Every
giggle.
single time we still giggle. So for our last piece, we want to turn it over to Mr. Will to talk about the last thing that we're going to be performing for you tonight. So Mr. Will.
Thank you. So our last work for the evening is Kleine Kammermusik, Opus 24, number 2 by Paul Hindemith. He lived from 1895 to 1963. We want to give you a taste of the concert music that we play in maybe a more formal setting. So this is one of the great works of the wind quintet literature. Early in his career, Hindemith was as well known as a virtuoso violist as he was a composer. In fact, he gave the world premiere of the Walton Viola Concerto, among many other works, including many of his own. Today, he's remembered primarily as a composer and a teacher. Originally from Germany, he emigrated to the United States with his Jewish wife to escape the Nazis before World War II. For a time, he was the Battelle Professor of Music at Yale University until his return to Europe, I think Switzerland, for the last decade of his life. This small chamber piece, which is what Kleine Kammermusik means in German, was written in 1922 while Hindemith was still in Germany. It has grown in popularity to the point that it is one of the major works of the wind quintet literature. And like I said, this is what we do, this is the sort of piece that we play in more formal recitals. It's 5 movements, but we're going to play the final movement. Enjoy.
right, so that concludes our part of the performance. So we'd like to take a moment to thank everybody for being here tonight, for joining us for this. I think that there's going to be a Q&A after this, Jess, is that correct?
Yes, that is. We have a little bit of time for Q&A.
Ask away.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to throw up into the chat, please do let us know. We'd love to hear from you. It was wonderful to let you see what we've been working on the past couple of months, which I don't know about you guys, but it was actually really nice after everything with the pandemic and not being able to play or do live music for so long, for us to be able to have the opportunity to sort of come together and perform this way and, you know, play with each other and sort of gather together as we've all gotten vaccinated and been able to be in the same space together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, good question. So the question is, when playing together, who leads typically, or do you rotate? And in general, a lot of times it'll depend on the beginning of the piece. So whoever starts the piece and has the most visible instrument tends to be the one who leads. So quite often it's Melanie. Sometimes it's Kelly. Sometimes it's Mike. Every once in a while it's me. I'm not very visible, but I try to give a good breath.
She does.
and Bassoon, like we all do at some point within the piece. We all work together. That's what chamber music is we don't have a conductor telling us what to do. So we're trying to make eye contact. And if we have a tricky entrance or just we need to come in together, you just take a good solid breath and play. And you'll even see like violinists and pianists do it. Like it doesn't have to be a wind player. The breath is pretty much just a general cue of like, now we're gonna breathe, now we're gonna play. And that works pretty well, quite often even better than movement, like physical movement with an instrument you're trying to conduct. So great question.
What's interesting about orchestras too is a lot of times is for some types of music, even with, you know, a bajillion people sitting in the orchestra, a lot of times you can just have somebody to get them started, and that's how orchestras used to function. But we're in a much smaller group, so, you know, sometimes, you know, maybe there is a tricky entrance or something, and, you know, we will take it down to working on a metronome with each other and separately to make sure we come in right when we're supposed to. And the other part of it too is we learn our music well enough that we know who's supposed to be in when. So sometimes we'll be clearing stuff up in rehearsal, but for the most part, the hope is that you come in and you know what's supposed to be happening when.
So we actually look at the score, which has all the parts, so that you go, oh, what is happening in this rest? And you might write some cues in for yourself or whatever. Yeah.
We'll write notes to ourselves of like who to listen to or look for a cue sometimes too. It's like, oh, hey, I'm with the flute.
And if it's not a new commission, we'll listen to other people doing the piece before and play along and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's about being as
you go.
It's about being as prepared as you can be. Anybody else got any questions? That was a really good one. We can talk more about our personal journeys. We can talk more about our instruments, or...
It is pretty funny to be like, my entire life has been devoted to music, but I'm going to tell you about it in 3 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
We can also plug our concert in 2 weeks from now.
We could. Yeah, we've got one more coming up. This one's actually a little bit different. It's on a Thursday. What's the date for that?
27th.
The 27th of May, and it will also be at 7 o'clock. So if you want to hear, I think that's the last. That's the last installment of this concert series. So we're going to be talking about, I think,
auxiliary instruments. So you'll hear stuff like the bass clarinet and the contrabassoon and the piccolo and alto flute.
All sorts of fun stuff. Yeah. So we said auxiliary and endangered instruments. Yes. For those of us who play the ones that aren't quite as popular. We're not
the ones that are scholarship winning though.
That's true.
Yeah.
You play the flute, it's like go home.
No. But they also make excellent contributions to the musical world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Miss Jess, I think if nobody else has any questions, I'll turn it over to you. And
Yeah, thank you so much to everybody who tuned in tonight. It was great to see all you folks tuned in tonight. I think it was a great conversation, really exciting. really great. Thanks again to our wonderful supporters that make the programming possible, National Grid and NISCA. I hope everybody enjoys a wonderful weekend as the weather's warming up, and we'll hope to see you again on Thursday the 27th for our last installment of these lovely educational series. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night.